Hey, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Happy Tuesday. Uh, it's an honor to have this special guest tonight joining us on Sounds of the Diaspora, Artist to Artist Conversation with Dion Parson. I'm so excited to have my main man, my Gemini brother on the show joining us. He's a amazing drummer, composer, producer, and entrepreneur. He's well versed in the music business. We're going to talk about that tonight and check out some of his music. Please join me in welcoming to our show the one and only Mr. Willie Jones III.
How you doing, Dion? What's happening?
I'm good, Willie. How are you doing?
Good, man. I'm here chilling in Brooklyn. Glad to
Yeah.
be on with you this
Is
evening.
it cold up there?
Not as cold as it was 2 days ago.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's low 50s, high
yeah.
40s.
Winter has set in, huh?
Say what?
Winter has set in, huh?
That in finally, yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Well, man, thank you for joining me on the show, man. I know we've been talking about this from this summer, trying to find a time to get up on the show, but
Yes,
thank
sir.
you for being here, man. I'm a big fan. I knew you from when you first came to New York and doing your thing, and I love your artistry on the drums. We've shared a couple chairs together
That's
with
right.
a number of artists, and I've always, enjoyed coming in either playing, after you or prior.
Before,
I just,
yeah.
yeah, man. I just want to always thank you for the grace and love of sharing some of those drum shares with me. But I want to talk about you tonight. Tonight, let's focus on Willie Jones III and share with our audience. How did you get into the music? I know you come from a musical family, but share with us that process.
Yeah, I come from a musical family. So my father was a jazz pianist.
Mhm,
So that was my uh, introduction to jazz music.
mhm,
And so, growing up, my mother sang in church. I had two older sisters who listened to all the popular music. So I heard everything that was popular on the radio. Child of the 70s,
mhm.
um, Earth, Wind and Fire, whatever, Roberta Flack, LTD, popular
Right.
black music, pop music. But my dad was a jazz musician. And so he took me to like jam sessions before I was in school. Like
Okay.
that. So I would get to go to rehearsals with him and hang out. He would put me down and just sit me down, and I'm like 4 or 5, and
Mhm.
I used to watch the musicians rehearse, and I gravitated to the drums just
Okay.
naturally. And also about that time, I just started, you know, banging on furniture around the house, and so my parents eventually bought me a practice set,
Mhm.
not a drum set. They got me a practice set, and that was my introduction to jazz music. But also just hanging out with my dad, it introduced me to the jazz scene.
Mhm.
Just hanging out and I always thought it was cool to be a jazz musician, go to rehearsal, you get to work at night,
Right.
stuff like that. So from seeing that, I always wanted to be a jazz musician. You know,
That's beautiful. And you mentioned that your sisters were into the pop stuff, but you gravitated more towards the traditional jazz stuff. And
yeah,
yeah, which is unique because a lot of guys just go for the popular art form, but the jazz
right.
it requires a different discipline. Now, you studied with some great masters, man. You were apprenticed under some of the some of my heroes. Let's talk. How was that? How was that coming up?
So yeah, I mean, I came up. Well, my first teacher was a guy named Clarence Johnston,
Hmm.
and I started studying with him when I was about 14, 15. Even though I wasn't serious about practicing at the time, but again, just watching him and taking lessons with him, and he made some records with Sweet Edison and Sonny
Okay.
Stitt
Hmm.
and Freddie Roach, some Blue Note records with Freddie Roach. So he was my first teacher, and then fast forward when I got to college, I started studying with Tootie Heath,
Right.
and uh, and and when I started studying with Tootie Heath, I was also being mentored by Billy Higgins
Okay.
at the same time. So,
Mhm.
and I met Billy Higgins also just in the jazz scene around L.A., not
Mhm.
really knowing who he was.
Right.
So it was a combination of being around drummers like Billy Higgins. There was a drummer named Donald Green. in
Mhm.
LA who's still playing to this very day. Ndugu Chancellor.
Mhm.
I never studied with him, but I saw him play. He was one of the first drummers I saw play live
Okay.
when I was a kid. And who else? Oh, I'm drawing a blank, but Tootie. I started studying with Tootie for 2 years when I was in college.
Okay.
You know, so between him, Billy Higgins, uh, Clarence Johnston, Ndugu Chancellor, and Ndugu, I never took lessons with him, but
Mhm.
he was always there to give me advice
Yeah.
about about how to navigate being in the industry.
Yeah, and he's versed with that as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 So
Well, you've had some great teachers and mentors, man, which actually sets that foundation. Because I heard of you, I heard about you before you even came to New York. So when you came to New York and I would go and check you out with Roy and stuff, I was like, yeah, this, just that the foundation was already set. It's already in place, which set the tone for you to play with all the greats that you've ended up playing with.
thank
But
you.
it's great to know that history, because I actually didn't know you studied with Tootie. I really thought it was just Billy was your main teacher.
See, officially I never studied with Billy.
So yeah,
We would just hang out, and
right.
he would always give me advice. But
Mhm.
see, I used to watch Billy practice,
Okay.
which is really like a lesson,
Right. Yeah.
right? Like just watching him practice for like an hour.
Hmm.
He'd just be playing on the drums. So I used to do that a lot. Watch him practice at his performing arts place, the World Stage.
Hmm.
Um, but Tootie was the one who kind of coached me because I had developed a little bit of technique, but he kind of like helped me how to play more musical,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But again, it was Higgins who was the first person that told me I should move to New York.
Okay.
So he's the first one that said nah, because back then I felt if I could do gigs in LA and pay my bills, I've made it.
Yeah.
Like that was the ceiling.
Right.
So I thought. And then Billy was like, "Nah, you don't want to just work around LA. You want to you want to be on records and travel
Hmm.
the world and play with all the cats."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
New York was important. When I got to New York, folks told me, you come to New York for 212 zip code. You don't necessarily going to be living in New York or being in New
right.
York all the time, because you're going to travel a lot. But that 212 zip code
It's
meant
important.
a lot, because when you gave out your cards back then, you had cards. You gave out your cards, and people said, "Oh, you're in New York. I'm gonna call you."
Right.
Everybody was trying to get to New York, so it meant a lot, especially if you had tenure in New York, 5, 6, 7 years.
That's
You were
right.
you were doing something. But so you got to New York, and you started hitting the scene, and you got on the scene with some great artists. Can you share with our audience some of the folks that you ended up working with when you came to New York?
Yeah. So timing is everything, right?
Mm.
So I before I moved to New York, I was playing with Arturo Sandoval.
Okay.
Uh, and I had visited New York. Well, not visited. I came to New York once for the monk competition,
Mm-hmm.
like 92, 93. And I competed. I didn't win, but that was my first visit to
Mm-hmm.
New York. So I got to see all the different young drummers, like everybody could play.
Mm-hmm.
So fast forward 5 years later, I'm playing with Arturo, and I had been with him for a couple of years. I got a chance to play with Roy.
Mm-hmm.
He came to LA, and I don't know if Kareem Riggins was still playing with him at the time, but he was about to leave maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So I played a week with Roy, and that was 2 months before I moved to New York.
Okay.
So after playing with Roy, it just like it kind of put a stamp, like it's just like okay, I'm out of here, you
Yeah.
know. So Arturo Sandoval had a week at the Blue Note in June of '97.
Mm-hmm.
I told his manager, I said, buy me a one-way ticket. I'm moving to New York, because I mean, my man Teodros. You know Teodros.
Theodore Avery, yeah.
Avery. So he's from California. So I know him from back in the day.
Mm.
I had already called him and like, okay, I'm gonna stay with you.
Right.
So I became roommates with Teodros, and I got a one-way ticket. So my first week in New York, I played the Blue Note with Arturo
Okay.
Sandoval, and then I never came back to LA.
Wow.
That was my my first week moving to New York, and then a little by little, I started playing with Roy more, doing more gigs, and then I started playing less with Arturo until eventually I just left Arturo, and then I went on with Roy.
Roy, yeah.
But just moving to New York in the beginning, I started working with Horace Silver.
Okay.
And through that, it was me, Jimmy Green, and John Weber, and Ryan Kaiser.
Mm-hmm.
So then Ryan was working with Eric Alexander and a bunch of other people. So I started working with them.
Right, right.
So that kind of put me in touch with the crisscross.
Right.
You know, that scene. So
Yeah.
I started doing record days for Crisscross as a sideman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I was just very fortunate. I mean, I was working with a lot of different people. I mean, I'm drawing a blank. I can't think of all the people, but
It's been a lot, but
it's been a lot, you know.
yeah. But
But
you did it the right way because you came on a one-way ticket, which like you had to set your mentality like I'm here, I'm not leaving, because some cats will come to New York and say, well, I'm gonna hang out for 2-3 months, see how it goes. But you know, yeah.
No, I knew I wanted to move to New York.
Yeah.
Now my original plan was to be here for 5 years.
Okay.
I said I want to come to New York for 5 years, make some records, prove that I can make it, and then I'll go back to LA.
Right.
You know, hometown boy made good.
Right.
Like
and
that,
how long you in New York now?
It's been 27 years.
It's like that, bro.
You know, I ain't going nowhere. I keep saying, I'm like, well, it's gonna be 10 years.
Yeah.
Maybe 15, but no.
Right. Yeah.
I can't leave.
You're a New Yorker now, man. You in there, bro. You're a staple. So.
It's official.
It's official. But that's great, man. That's great. So you play with a whole bunch of accomplished musicians. I mean, you've done the mucky to the Milt Jacksons, the Roy Hargroves, you know, the Villa Francas, Bobby Hutcherson. I mean, Sonny Rollins. You've done all of that. And at some point, you know, you decided to do your own projects and go down that route, not taking away from your sideman, you know, career, but it's clear as especially as a jazz musician, you have like two paths: as a sideman and then as an artist, you know, as a leader artist yourself. Yeah. When did you start thinking about that, and how did that come about for you being a leader?
Okay, that's sort of like two questions, so I'm gonna answer it. The first half, the leader thing came later.
Yeah.
Okay. But like doing your own projects, I was thinking about that long before I moved to New York.
Okay.
Billy Higgins, he was telling me about the power or the importance of owning your own music.
Right.
Like years ago, like in the early 90s, he used to tell me and all the other young musicians stories about how important it is to like own your masters, own your music. And there was a label in LA called Black Jazz Records. That like Walter Bishop, Henry Franklin, people like that, they did records for them. And I think Michael Carvin may have done some recordings for them too. Okay. But it was a black owned label.
Okay.
Or at least a black run label. And also the label that Charles Tolliver and Stanley Cowell owned in the 70s.
Right.
Can't think of the name of it, but Billy Higgins told me about them and how he did a lot of sessions for them. So those were the examples that he used in telling me that, okay, it's important that you own. You don't want to be someone who's just doing 1 million dates and you get paid for the dates. And that's it. The music lives on forever.
Right.
So I was always thinking about that. And then fast forward, I mean, as someone who does a lot of records as a sideman, you want to do a project on your own. Like as an artist, maybe you write your own music.
Right.
And so I was very fortunate to do a lot of records with different labels, but a lot of them were with Criss Cross, and I recorded for Sony a few times, and Blue Note. Anyway, I asked all the small labels, about doing a record. Mm-hmm. No takers. I approached Blue Note, or there was a guy who was at Blue Note at the time. Can't think of his name, but I took a meeting with him about doing a record, and not crickets.
Right.
So my introduction to doing my first project was just out of necessity. Mm-hmm. At the time I moved to New York, and I was like, well, let me do a demo so I can get it to Criss Cross, or I can get it to this label or whatever. And then I just realized that demo is a record.
Right.
Why am I? It's a waste of money. Why am I? Because I'm paying all the musicians who are my friends.
Right.
Why not just?
You're paying them decent as well,
I'm paying them because as someone who does sideman work for all the small labels, what they're paying everybody.
Right.
So
right.
I was very fortunate. Like I was with Roy at the time, so I was working all the time. So okay, I said, well, let me save up some tour money,
right,
and do a project, and see how it goes, And then from there, it just kind of continued on. Like one project, I was like, okay, I'll do another one. Mm-hmm. After about the fifth project, or even before that, I'm like, I don't want to sign with anybody.
Right.
Like I'm not. They can't offer me enough money.
Right.
To record for somebody.
Yeah, because if you do it right, you recoup. I mean, the last. I mean, I'm just gonna share this with you. The last time I sat down with a label to talk, they were like, "Okay, just bring me a product. You do it. I would just do a distribution deal." The cat came to the studio. He sat there for the 4 days we recorded. He was part of the mixing process, and we put the cover together. And I was like, "Hey, bro, we 6 months into this, man. I haven't seen a contract." Bro, he gave me a contract, man, a 25-75% deal with him taking 75, and I'm like, man, you know how much money I spent on this. And when I did the calculation on like say 20,000 records, it's like it's gonna take me X amount of years to recoup versus and when I did it myself, I said if I did 5,000 CDs and just sell them less than 5,000.
That's what I was going to say. If you do 2,000, you'll probably recoup
2,000 CDs. I would already recoup what I spent on my project, and I did that within like 8 months of doing my own CD. So I mean, real talk, it's actually harder for a drummer as well too, because a lot of people don't see us as leaders.
And that's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother conversation of reality that we have to deal with.
Exactly, because then you're talking about, okay, I got these projects, I got a group. You have the 21st Century Band.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, now you got to reach. So you're reaching out to promoters, to festivals, to clubs, people who know who you are. They've seen you a million times.
Right.
They've seen you with this band. They've seen you with this artist. But now you're approaching them as a leader.
Right.
You're asking them for a gig. All of a sudden, you become new again.
Right. Exactly.
They don't know you, or like, well, I'm not sure. Well, let's see.
Right.
Like, what do you mean, let's see?
Yeah. It's really interesting how that is, man. I had a record executive tell me, he said, when I first put out 21st Century Band with the new Caribbean sound, he said, man, D, if you played a horn or was a singer, I would have signed you immediately. He said, but you're a drummer. He said, man, that's hard to market. You sitting in the back and, and I'm like, wow, that's how you guys see it. They don't see a product. They, but that's that pop mentality. Put a pretty face in front that can sing and shake up, and you just market that. It's how much of it is the music and how much of it is the show.
Well, I mean, see, that's just whoever that person was or is. They're just showing how lazy they are.
Right.
That's you're the drummer. It's a great record. No, That's your job. I'm a drummer. Find a way to sell this.
I don't know where to sell it. Yeah.
Because you agree that the music is great. You
Right.
like the music. Find a way to market. It's a drummer.
Bro, I went to Philly Joe, well, not Philly Joe Jones. I met Philly Joe Jones. I heard him play many times, but I never attended his personal concerts. But
Gotcha.
Elvin, Art Blakey, Tony Williams, Max Roach, Roy Haynes, Lewis Hayes, K. Wash, Lewis Nash, Jeff Tain Watts, Michael Carvin, your shows. I've been to so many casts, and they
Right.
always sold out. They always sold. I've never been to a drummer's concert that that is
Yeah.
not packed. And that's the thing I don't get is like, when you share your product with someone and it's like, well, we got to check the numbers and we got to do this and then you go to hear a cat that's like gigging all the time and
Right.
you go in there on a Friday night third set and it's half filled.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's interesting. It's really interesting to see that phenomenon and always have to, as a drummer, always have to sell yourself harder. And that's one of the things I started that conversation to talk about you as a businessman because I've always admired that skill set in you because that's something you talked about creating your own band and all of that, but you also have your own label.
Yes.
Right. And that came out of necessities, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, it just came from me understanding that nobody else was going to record me. So,
Right.
I did 3 records on my own, 3 or 4.
Mhm.
And at that time, I had Eric Reed playing with me a
Mhm.
lot. So Eric's on my first 3 or 4 records, and I was playing with him a lot too, like on his gigs.
Right.
So at some point, he was in between record deals,
Mhm.
and he just mentioned out of the blue, like, well, why don't I do a record for you?
Wow. Okay.
So that was sort of this, even though I was already like 3 records in, but they were all under my name.
Mm-hmm.
So mentally, I didn't really think of myself, oh, I got a label.
Right.
No, because anybody, okay, you recording your own yourself. But when I produced Eric's, or the first project I produced on him, that was like the beginning of me really thinking in terms of, okay, this is something other than just a musician making his own music.
Right.
And documenting it. So I ended up doing 4 records on Eric, and that kind of snowballed from. Then I was able to do 2 projects on Cyrus Chestnut.
Okay.
And then I had 2 on Justin Robinson.
Yeah.
So I mean, but by then, it's just whether I sell 5,000 or 50.
Right.
Well, at this point, I mean, because I'm not the greatest business person, but I've been doing it so long through trial and error that I'm not losing any money.
Right. And that's important.
And that's important.
That's important because what if you didn't do that and didn't venture down this path and didn't learn anything from it to share with someone or even have that for yourself? Now you have a catalog, and that's the thing that I share with some of my young students is like, after I have, I have 6 CDs I have a catalog. I could do something with that,
That's right.
And again, you won't know unless you try.
Unless
and you put yourself out there, so kudos to you and continue success on that because I know there's someone out there listening that's gonna say, hey man, Willie did it. I'm gonna do it. And if I need to call Willie for advice, I'm gonna do that because trust me, ain't too many people when I ventured into that lane, not that many people I could have called for advice, bro.
Of course. I mean, it's a lot of work, man, and and look, we've talked a lot in the past. There have been times where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do one more project, and then I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna take it 2 years off or a year.
Yeah.
But it's almost like an addiction. I can't.
Yeah.
Because you get a musical idea, or maybe somebody approaches you with a great idea,
right,
to document. I'm like, oh man, I got to do it.
You got to do it. You got to do it because you don't know where that energy creates energy that creates energy. You don't know
Exactly.
where that's going to lead. It's going to lead to something, and look at all of the great opportunities that you have had because of that business, and
Appreciate that.
playing. And so you're wearing a number of hats because you're playing on a high level. You got your business that you're producing, so it's to be out here on that level. It's just a different mindset.
It's a different mindset. It's, I mean, just making the recordings because first of all, well, especially if it's my record, but maybe it's a record that I'm not playing on,
Mhm.
or I'm playing on it, but it's not my record.
Right.
And I'm producing it.
Right.
For example, like a record I produced on Eric Reed. So I'm the producer, so I got to make sure my playing is up to par as far as knowing the music and everything.
Right.
But then I got to go back in the booth and have my producer hat on.
Yeah.
And function like that. And do I need to make any suggestions? And
right.
It's a juggle,
yeah.
But I love it though.
Yeah.
I love the challenge of it.
Yeah.
So.
And you do it well, man. So thanks for sharing that with our audience, man. If anybody have any questions for Willie about that portion, you can reach out to him at the end of the show. He's gonna share with you, his social media and stuff that you can reach out. But it's important to notice. A couple of weeks ago, we had Marcus Johnson on, and we talked heavily about the publishing side of things and the business side, because that's the thing that a lot of guys drop. Also, they don't. Right. They may write a song and copyright that song, and then that's it.
Right.
And there's more to it moving forward. So all of these things that we as performers and composers that we need to know that. So it's good to share. I mean, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's the business side of things. I want to jump into Willie the performer because that's my favorite side of you, So you shared some great music with us, and our producer have queued up some stuff. But before we jump into listening first, the first song we have is a song called "Something for Ndugu." Tell us about that.
Yeah, Something for Ndugu. Well, first that's from my last record called Fallen Heroes. Mm-hmm. So that was a record I made during the pandemic, during the shutdown.
Okay.
And so the theme behind the record is sort of like not a tribute, but a celebration of like all the fallen heroes. Mm-hmm. So I did that record not too long after Roy Hargrove had passed. Mm-hmm. Larry Willis,
right,
who I played with in Roy's band. Jimmy Heath had passed, and I had worked with Jimmy. And Ndugu Chancellor, who was very instrumental in my life as a drummer when I was growing up. So, and very influential to me. It was sort of my way of doing a tribute to him, celebration, if you will, sort of a drum piece, like what Max Roach would do. He would it's just drums,
right?
Like based off of a drum phrase or motif. But this was based on something that Ndugu actually played.
Okay.
A phrase he played on a Michael Jackson record, off the Thriller record, like the intro. So I took that phrase and just made an improvisational piece off of it. So that's where Something for Ndugu comes from.
Okay, great. Let's check it out. Something for Ndugu. Hey, I love it, man. I love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
So developing a solo drum, a drum solo, developing that. How do you go about that process? Share that for our audience.
It's for it, you know, it's ooh, I just I take the phrase, I take the initial phrase,
Mm-hmm.
and I just start playing it over and over
Mm-hmm.
until it kind of morphs into I'm just improvising, like whatever comes, like every time I play that piece, it's different,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So
And the initial phrase is "Skadakum, skadakum, skadakum."
yeah, check out the Michael Jackson song "Baby Be Mine."
Baby, okay,
Check that song out. The opening drum lick is that,
okay. I'm gonna do that.
you
Baby,
know,
be mine.
because
Because
I was
because I was sitting up there thinking, like, where's that? Where did I? Because I listened to a lot of Michael Jackson, but I'm like, where's that? Where's
yeah,
that phrase? Because the intros, drum intros are a thing. You
right.
learn them and you know that's the song. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I remember when I first heard it on Michael Jackson's record, I was like, that's a jazz lick,
Yeah.
you know, and that's even before I knew that was Ndugu
Uh-huh.
playing on it.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, just like I take a phrase like that and I just play it over again. And now I had thought about it, like, okay, you know, uh, if I can hear it, I can sing it, you know, whatever. And then I try to improvise around it, you know.
Mm.
Um, but really, it's just that lick is the song, is the piece, and then
Right.
whatever happens after that, that's the song. You know,
Right.
just
Right.
improvise, and
That's
then
very good.
I'll come back to it afterwards. You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great. I enjoyed it. Just sitting up and hearing the different nuances and then coming back to it. It's like, wow. Even sounds like one point, it's like, okay, so he's at a bridge now. It sounds like a bridge section
Oh, I
happening.
appreciate that. Yeah, I didn't do that was an unintentional. You know, I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah,
As
because sometimes you're thinking like 4, 8 phrases and it comes back to something. Yeah. Yeah.
well, it's funny when if I'm soloing like over a tune,
Hmm.
that's how I try to solo like that.
Right.
Okay, this the A section. Okay, bridge. Okay, like my goal is for I want the other musicians to be able to hear my playing like that.
Right.
Okay, now this is the last A. But on that piece, I was just going for broke. Like, okay, we'll see what happens.
It happened. It happened, and well, I'm drawn into. So I'm listening differently. That's why I wanted you to explain
I
it to our
appreciate
audience.
that.
A lot of time they just say, "Oh, it's just a drum thing," but
Right.
there's intent in what you're
Oh
doing.
yeah, there's definitely intent because I'm always whatever I play, I'm always going to come back to that phrase.
Right. Exactly.
Like at
Exactly.
one point I just started playing time,
Right.
like I was playing in the band. You
Mm.
know, now there's another take of that song. Like I did 2 takes of it.
Okay.
Maybe one day I'll release that, but it's completely different. Like it's all solo.
Right.
There's no
Okay.
time. Like it's just I played the phrase and then I solo. You know,
And then came back to the phrase, and
and
then
then came
so.
back to the phrase. Yeah. So but I kind of liked uh um well Gerald Cannon. He was
Mm.
there when I recorded that.
Okay.
Well, he's on the record, but he was in the booth and he was like, well, you open up on the ride cymbal. I think you should use that. So I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's nuance. Doing and playing solo by yourself is not easy. A lot of times,
Right.
we practice by ourselves, but when we get on gigs, it's always connected to a song or something like that.
That's right.
To do that, that's one on my bucket list too. Hey, I gotta do me a solo
Yeah.
presentation as well. That's next, and I'm actually working on that right now. So
Beautiful. That's
it's good
beautiful.
to hear you do that. But yeah,
Thank you.
kudos, man. Continued success in that.
Thank
Let's
you.
move on because you shared a couple of songs with us, and
Hmm.
you're in New York, you're in Manhattan, and this one is entitled Manhattan Melodies.
Yeah, Manhattan Melodies. That's an Eric Reed song.
Mm.
And I mean, whenever I do a record, of my own. 9 times out of 10, he'll probably be playing piano on the date, which means that I got to have 1 or 2 of his songs. Right. Like, he's an incredible pianist, but he's a great composer, and he's also great at composing a tune at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like, man, I still need one more song. But this is a song that he recorded, one of his old records that he did for Universal, Manhattan Melodies. So again, I started playing it on my gigs.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I want to record it. So, and I was very fortunate. I mean, on this track, it's Eric Reed, Buster Williams, Eddie Henderson, and I believe Ralph Moore.
Okay.
Playing tennis. So Manhattan Melodies is great track,
Well, let's check it out.
All right.
Yes, that was Manhattan Melodies. Yeah. They gave you some at the end of that, huh?
A little bit. You
Yeah.
know, that's all I can ask for. You know, just give me a little.
Hey,
I'm
take it
good.
while you can.
That's right. You know,
Yeah, that's a great cast of musicians though that you put together for that.
thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, that's a great crew. And I know you spend time playing with Buster as well. You played in his band as well, right?
I've done a couple of gigs with him, a couple
Yeah.
of gigs, and I was blessed for him he did a couple of gigs with me.
Okay.
Yeah, but just getting him to record with me
Mhm.
was like, you know, Christmas came early,
Oh yeah.
you know, and I got him twice,
Yeah.
you know. So, um, uh, yeah, I mean, he's Buster's one of the musicians where, like, you know, you grow up and you got the records that you look at, listen to,
Mhm.
and you're like, oh wow, all these great musicians. Buster's one of them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I mean, I first got hip to Buster on my mom's Nancy Wilson records.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so I mean, and then as I got older, I'm like, oh, okay, he played with Herbie and
Hmm.
Headhunters and uh, you know, just all the people he's played with. But to to get to play with him and on my own projects, uh, I mean, it's
Yeah.
priceless. You know,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it gets no better. So, but I mean, but it's like that for all of them.
Oh
For
yeah.
me,
Hmm.
Eddie Henderson. I mean, these are people I've been listening to on records for years.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, like Eric Reed. I mean, and he's the top. You know,
Hmm.
but he's our generation.
Right.
You know, but those guys are legends. You know, like
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a blessing to get them to if they call you for a gig, it's great. But if for them to bless your record,
Right. Right.
you know,
And again, that's part of being on the New York scene. You get to New York, and
right?
you find yourself in those arenas. I mean, just like you. But the first gig I ever played with Buster was a Museum of Natural History with Steve
Uh,
Teray. Steve called me for the gig, and we went to Buster's house to rehearse. I
right.
think we played like for 1 hour or something. And it was like, oh, we're good. And I was like, wait.
Yeah,
We only went over like a couple of songs, like, let's go to the gig. And we just
right.
went in, and hey, it was like that. It's like, oh, you
Yeah.
good. You got this covered. And after that, it was like, you
See,
know,
I subbed for you a couple of times with Steve,
yeah.
I believe, years back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I
It's
mean,
and again, just showing up. A lot of times you show up and you don't even know who's on the gig.
right, right,
And then then it became like, Steven Scott would be there, Buster would be there, and it's like, oh, we're good.
right.
When
That's
you
right.
call a rehearsal, it's like, okay, well, somebody new is coming in to check out the music.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
But it's good to have that type of relationships with our elders and the folks that have made the music what it is, and to be part of that lineage, because you hold on, you have such a traditional feel and presentation with the music. I mean, a lot of cats get okay and they do a lot of different things. I mean, I'm known for doing the Broadway stuff and doing the
Hmm.
Caribbean stuff and all of that, but some cats, like like yourself, you hold on a certain seat that in that
Yeah,
traditional vibe, and just you're carrying that torch, man. You like Kay Wash, Lewis Nash, I mean, Hutch, I mean, yeah,
I try to. I do my best. I mean, it's the best way I can express myself.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It comes natural, like just uh, coming in that tradition, trying to,
yeah,
coming up under Higgins and
hmm,
Tootie and Kenny Washington. You
yeah,
know,
definitely, and it
um,
shows.
so I try my best.
Yeah, and again, to be blessed with cats like Buster. So Buster shared a song with you on one of your recordings, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah. This is from a record I did called Groundwork,
mhm.
and man, Buster Williams. I mean, his pen is incredible. But this is a song he dedicated to his son, I believe, and it's called Tokudo.
Mhm.
And you'll hear it.
Yeah.
It starts out with him doing this thing. So,
Well, let's check it out, Tokudo. Yeah, how's that saying goes? You can't lose with the blues.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. You always have to have a blues somewhere in there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely, man. And that's laid it out right out there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
can tell you all having a lot of fun.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Those guys, it's so easy to play with them.
Hmm.
Just I don't even think we rehearsed. It's like we just, or maybe we just run it down once at the studio,
Hmm.
and then we do 2 takes, and that's it. Move on.
Nice. Yeah.
You know.
We got someone that said Manhattan Melody captures the Big Apple perfectly. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
Oh yeah.
nice.
Love.
Thank you, Lois White.
Yeah, yeah. Enjoying the music, man. Good stuff, bro. And
Yeah,
Sounds of the Diaspora. That's what we do here.
thank
Yep.
you, man. I
That's what we
appreciate it.
do.
This is a great platform you have, man. Incredible, and this is perfectly in line with what we talk about all the time as far as entrepreneur and having
Yeah.
your own business and your own platform.
Thank you. Well, it's needed because where can we go I mean, besides BGO or was that KCR? I mean, it's like,
Right.
but just for us to sit down to talk as an artist, from artist to artist. A lot of times when you go and you get interviewed. I'm not knocking anybody. It's by someone that's not an artist. They may know a lot about the music, but to sit down
Right.
with artists and talk, you can have a different conversation.
Right. Exactly. No, when you're talking to another artist, especially one that you know and
Yeah.
have a rapport with, a relationship, you can get more comfortable and talk, and yeah, it's just a deeper, better conversation you can
Yeah,
have.
yeah. And the questions that's being asked are questions that are like, they need to be asked.
Right.
We're not getting heavy into the other stuff, but it's
Right.
from a listening audience standpoint, we can sit up and talk about the music on a whole nother level, which I appreciate. And for me, like being here in the Virgin Islands, this is one of the things that keep me sane. I look forward to a Tuesday night to come on with you
That's
guys
what's
and
up.
just cut it up.
Yes, sir.
This is my New York fix.
There you go. That's hey, it's beautiful, man. That's what's happening.
You got to figure out your stuff too, but
That's right.
on a serious note, it's been equally as pleasant for me because I'm learning so much, and I've had so many guests just reach out to me on the side and say, "Man, thank you for what you're doing, or thank you for having that particular guest on." I mean, we've had folks from all range. I mean, Sounds of the Diaspora, yeah.
Yeah.
It's about the movement of a people. And we can talk about the Afro-Caribbean diaspora, the African diaspora, but when we talk about the music of jazz being America's art form, it has affected the world.
That's right.
So for me, I think it's all inclusive. It's all
Yes, sir.
inclusive, and your story is one that, hey, like your next song said, to wisdom the prize. You
That's
got
right.
you got to share that knowledge because from that
You have
knowledge
to.
will come,
You have to
come
share it. You have to pass it on.
pass it on.
Yeah.
I think this is a perfect, way for me to get the information, especially in the area that I'm in, to share with folks that's not in New York or, have
Right.
never been to New York or never been to these or the Vanguard or Smalls or,
Right.
the Mesro or any of those spots in that area that, excuse me, that you and I frequent so well.
Right.
And talk about the folks that have never been. They get to New York and they don't even think about that, and
Yeah.
they find other places to go. But this is a good way to showcase that. So, again, thank you for sharing your
Thank
information.
you, man. Thank you for having me, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
let's jump into this last tune before
Yes.
we have to leave because we're just about out of time. But to wisdom, the prize.
To Wisdom the Prize. That also is from the Fallen Heroes, my latest record, and it's a beautiful tune written by the great Larry Willis, and it's a song that we used to play every night with Roy Hargrove. So it's a tune that's dear to my heart. I love it, and again, it was one of my ways of celebrating Larry and Roy.
Okay.
Was to put that on my record. So To Wisdom the Prize.
Let's check it out. Yes, that's To Wisdom the prize. To Wisdom the prize. I really enjoy that, man. That's a
Thank
keep.
you. Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. So, man, I just want to thank you for sharing all the music that you shared with us tonight and being on the show. I know your schedule has been very hectic, but again, thank you, Willie, for taking the time to be here and sharing your story and your music
Appreciate it.
with the audience.
Thank you so much for having me, Dion, man. We've talked about this for a while, and I appreciate you making it happen. You know.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before you leave, can you let our audience know where how they can follow you? Where they can.
Yeah, you can follow me. I'm on all the platforms. Instagram, Straight Swinging 68. You can find me on Instagram. My music, uh, my website is williejones3.com. And you can follow me on Facebook, Willie Jones III. My music is on iTunes, Spotify, Tidal, Apple Music, all the digital platforms. Um, I have videos on YouTube, and yeah, you can find me. I'm all over.
You're easy to find.
Easy to find, you know. But through williejones3.com, you could find all of my all the records that are on WJ3 Records. You can find through williejones3.com, and also WJ3 Records through Bandcamp. Find it there, and also through Apple Music also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So you've heard that, folks, Bandcamp, Apple Music, but the main source, williejones3.com. You could check him out. Follow Willie, go on those social media apps and like him and see what he's up to, man. Support his brothers, support what he's doing, and reach out to him if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dion. Appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. Thanks for joining us, man. We really enjoyed having you, and thanks again for sharing your story.
Thank you, man.
All right. You take care, bro. That was the great Willie Jones III hanging out with us tonight on Sounds of the Diaspora. As you can tell, he has a lot to share, and he gave up a lot of information and some beautiful music. So really go out and support him. Check out what he's doing, and follow him on Instagram, social media, Facebook, those type of places. So next week, come back and join us as we bring to you to Sounds of the Diaspora, the one and only Mr. Freddie Hendricks, trumpeter, composer, educator. He's got a lot to share with us also. So look forward to seeing you next week on Sounds of the Diaspora. You take care. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed evening.